let's just take a look at some veteran players who are winners and losers via the NFL draft process. Some players we might be looking to buy or sell in the coming months, which is the NFL and the Dynasty offseason, which are the slowest months of the season. Don't forget to like the video, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to try to have some fun off-season videos for you guys coming out in the next few weeks, some different topics, and also possibly some live streams in our future, something we want to do more of. And also, don't forget, you can get access to our Discord for a free week. Check the pinned comments down below. Get in there, interact with us. These are some players that we've been discussing in that Discord channel throughout the last few months. And this list is going to change. We're going to add players. We're going to take players away. But mostly I want to know in the comment section down below, are these players some guys you're trying to buy in this offseason? Are there players you're trying to sell in the offseason? Is there anyone I didn't mention? Do you agree? Do you disagree? We love interaction here at the Dynasty Rewind, so let us know in the comment section down below. But with that said, let's get to today's topic. I'm going to start with some winners and then we'll get into the losers. And for the winners and the losers, I'm going to have 4 of each, and then I'm going to have kind of an honorable mention to be discussed amongst those players there. So for winners, and again, I wanted to try and keep this to veteran players. Mike, when we discussed this, we did talk about possibly putting rookies in there, but we've talked about rookies for so long for the last month and even before that, prior to the NFL draft. So I wanted to make this about veterans. You know, yes, you can build a roster around rookies, but you need to sprinkle in some veteran players. I call them point scorers. And maybe these are some players that you could add to your rosters to help you try and win. First on that list for me, it's going to be C.J. Stroud. Houston Texans quarterback, had a phenomenal rookie season, threw for over 4,000 yards, and then really struggled in his second season last year. A lot of injuries to the wide receiver position, which we'll talk about in just a second. A lot of injuries at the offensive line position, and I'm going to talk about the additions here at the wide receiver position. They obviously add Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel in the second and third rounds of the NFL draft to really give C.J. Stroud some playmakers at the wide receiver position. Last year, it was, of course, Nico Collins, it was Stephon Diggs, and it was Tank Dell. All 3 of those guys missed significant portions of the season, 4 or more weeks, to really hamper C.J. Stroud's ability to get the ball downfield. And he's then at a certain point in the season, he's throwing to like Robert Woods and Xavier Hutchinson, who I know was a darling on the channel a few years ago, but he's just not it. He's not it. So C.J. Stroud gets those 2 guys. Also in free agency, they go out and get Christian Kirk. And then, of course, in the draft, they also bring in Woody Marks to supplement probably Joe Mixon and be the third down back there for the Texans. So you get those additions. And I know a big talking point with the Houston Texans is their offensive line. But, you just listened to their new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, who was the Rams passing game coordinator. They move off Bobby Slowick. They bring in Nick Caley. And then you look at the moves that they made. Yes, they did trade Laramie Tunsil to the Commanders, but they did add offensive linemen in free agency and via trade. They brought in Cam Robinson. They brought in Trent Brown to try and patch up that hole on the left side of the line left by Laramie Tunsil. And then they drafted Ariante Ursary in the second round. So while it doesn't look sexy on paper, the offensive line additions that the Texans made, basically what Nick Caserio said via his moves is we are not as worried about offensive line as everyone else. We think this was a system issue. And by that you could tell because they fired Bobby Slowick, who a year ago was a candidate to get a head coaching job. And they bring in Nick Caley again from the Rams, who had a lot to do with the success of that passing game. So they think it was a systemic issue with the offensive line, not necessarily a talent issue, although they did bring in a lot of different bodies into that offensive line. So you look at that, you look at the additions of the wide receivers that they brought in via the draft and, of course, through free agency. And I think C.J. Stroud is set up to kind of continue his momentum from his rookie season and move past the struggles of last season. A lot of last season wasn't necessarily on C.J. Stroud. It wasn't that he was making bad decisions. It was either that he didn't have time to make decisions or there was nobody to throw the ball to because the wide receivers just couldn't get open. So I'm going to put C.J. Stroud on this list. He's a player I'd be looking to buy. You could probably buy him a little low right now because of the impact of his second season and what that does to his value. And you might be able to get C.J. Stroud at a bargain deal. When you're looking back a year from now at C.J. Stroud, at the value you could have gotten him in a trade, I think that it's going to be something that you will not be able to get next offseason when CJ Stroud hopefully throws for 4,000 yards again and over 30 touchdowns, all that kind of success. Another name I have on this list, DeAndre Swift, a player that I was vigorously trying to sell, and I think everybody was trying to sell prior to the NFL draft, just because the Bears were linked to so many running backs pre-draft. You had them in the Ashton Genty discussion. You had them in the Travion Henderson discussion. You had them in the Quinshon Judkins discussion. You didn't really have them in the Omarion Hampton talk because you kind of thought that Hampton would not be there in the second round. They kind of got squeezed out of a running back because Genty wasn't available at 10, and then at their next pick in the second round, Henderson and Quinshon Judkins were off the board. So it was almost by default that they didn't grab a running back, but they had several opportunities throughout the remainder of the draft, and they end up not picking one up until the 7th round, that being Kyle Monangai, who, not really a pass-catching running back, kind of a thumper, maybe a goal line guy, maybe a third and fourth and short kind of guy, and kind of complements DeAndre Swift very well. The other thing we have to think about here is systemically, DeAndre Swift was with Ben Johnson in Detroit. And maybe it wasn't Ben Johnson who didn't like DeAndre Swift as much as it was Dan Campbell or Brad Holmes, the GM. And maybe it's a situation where Ben Johnson thinks that he can make DeAndre Swift work in Chicago. And look, I think there's an out in that contract after 2025. So this is not a long-term buy. And I would even say there's potential for the Bears to bring in a J.K. Dobbins or a Nick Chubb. That's not completely off the table. But in the last month on Keep Trade Cut, DeAndre Swift is up 12 spots on the running back rankings from just a month ago. So there's obviously been an effect on his value since the NFL draft because the Bears didn't bring anyone in. So for that reason, DeAndre Swift's on this list. I will say buyer beware because there's a chance that the pecking order in that running back room is not what it will be come week 1 because the Bears could make a move somewhere else. That's all I'm saying. I'm putting that information out there. I don't want to get a comment in a few months like, Zach, you didn't warn us that the Bears might bring in someone else. They might. And for that reason, DeAndre Swift right now a winner, potential to still look. He'll have a role. He will still be a part of the Bears backfield. He'll have opportunities. Might not be a lot of volume, but we'll see. But right now, DeAndre Swift very much so an NFL draft winner. That's going to bring us to our third guy, another running back. Definitely did not see the Bengals not addressing the running back position in the NFL draft. So that's going to be Chase Brown, who he finished the season last year as the RB10 in full PPR leagues. From week 9 through the end of the season, Chase Brown saw at least 80% snap share in every single game. And the Bengals' just lack of investment at the running back position suggests that they view Chase Brown as maybe not necessarily a long-term answer, but an answer for 2025, which if it's not, a Saquon Barkley or a Bijan Robinson or, one of the top heavy running backs, and Ashton Genty, you are looking at the running back position in a 1 to 2 year snapshot. And Chase Brown fits in that snapshot at this point. They only added Taj Brooks in the 6th round. They brought back Zach Moss on a restructured contract. But to me, there's no reason why Chase Brown, I'm not going to say he's a top 10 running back. I wouldn't even say he's an RB1. I could see him finishing RB 15 to 18 just because the Bengals obviously wanted to address their defense. They changed defensive coordinators. They brought in guys on the defense in the draft. We'll see what happens with Trey Hendrick. I'm just going off logic that the scores of Bengals games won't be 40 to 37. And for that reason, Chase Brown might get as much volume just because they don't need to score 40 points. I could be wrong, but I'm just going with logic there and saying, hey, I do think that Zach Moss, if he's healthy, and Taj Brooks get a little bit of work in that backfield, and the Bengals don't need to score 50 points every single game to try and compete. So Chase Brown, big winner out of the NFL draft, but I wouldn't necessarily say I'm expecting him to be a top 10, top 12 running back next year. I would comfortably say RB 15, RB 18, and if the Bengals defense is chopped liver like it was last year, then yeah, Chase Brown has the potential to be a top 10 running back because he is someone that will get targets out of the backfield. I think he had 65 targets last year, and again, was not really super involved in that offense weeks 1 through 8, as he was from weeks 9 on when he was playing at least 80% of the snaps at the running back position for the Bengals every single week. So really going to depend on the Bengals' defensive situation, but I would comfortably say he's a top 15, top 18 running back, at least in 2025. And then my last big winner coming out of the NFL draft, somebody that I was actively watching to see if the Jaguars did anything, is Jags tight end Brenton Strange. The Jaguars chose not to address the tight end position in the draft. There's a total lack of competition for targets from other tight ends in that offense. And I was waiting to see if they picked up maybe some of these other guys, because obviously they drafted Hunter, and I believe they gave up their second-round pick to do that this year. So they didn't have a pick outside of Travis Hunter until the third round, maybe. I was trying to see if maybe they took like an Elijah Arroyo or Terrence Ferguson. Those guys didn't even make it to the third round. Maybe a Harold Fannin, but they didn't. Brenton Strange is the Jaguars' starting tight end going into this season. And it says something when a new coach and a new general manager come in and they choose not to even address the position. They choose not to even bring in target competition. That's not to say, again, the same situation as DeAndre Swift. Hey, that situation is locked in. It's good to go. There's a lot of tight ends that could be available in the trade market, and we're going to talk about one of them in our losers video. But, a guy like Noah Fant could be available if Elijah Arroyo is ready to step in and take the lion's share of the snaps for the Seahawks. There's other tight ends that could be available in the trade market that could take away target competition from Brenton Strange. So just for the sole reason alone of the Jaguars doing absolutely nothing at the tight end position except shedding Evan Ingram and not bringing in nobody to catch passes. I think they brought in a blocking tight end. I can't remember who it was, but it's not anybody I'm worried about taking targets away from Brenton Strange, and he has to be on your list of winners for the NFL draft. I do have one honorable mention on the list. I actually had this guy on my winners list, then I took him off, then I thought about it again, and I just had to put Jerry Jeudy in here. Honorable mention to Jerry Jeudy, giving him his participation trophy for this list. Simple fact of every single mock draft that we saw had Travis Hunter going to Cleveland. And at the end of the day, they didn't bring in a single pass catcher to come in and just like Brenton Strange, provide target competition. So it's Jerry Jeudy. They also let Elijah Moore go. I do believe that Cedric Tillman hopefully will be healthy from his concussions that he was suffering last year. They did draft Harold Fannin. Not sure how he's going to fit into that offense, but I'm not too worried about it. Whoever is under center is going to lean on Jerry Jeudy in the passing game. This is such an unsexy name to put on this list, but when you think about it, we're thinking of Jerry Jeudy with the Broncos. And last year he had 145 targets. And I can kind of see him within that range again in 2025. Maybe not 145, maybe 130 to 140. But the Cleveland Browns are probably going to be in games where they're trailing in the second half. Still not a very good team, very defensive-heavy team. They did draft Mason Graham, top 5, and then, of course, they brought back Myles Garrett. But, who the heck knows what's happening at the quarterback position? Is it Shedeur? Is it Dylan Gabriel? Is it Kenny Pickett? Is it Joe Flacco? Who knows? But whoever it is going to have to rely on Jerry Jeudy to be the team's wide receiver 1. So, again, you're not thinking of Jerry Jeudy. I know because I wasn't, and I even pulled him off this list. But when I thought about it, I'm like, he secretly had a really good season last year. I don't think we are really talking about Jerry Jeudy just because we still have a bad taste in our mouth from his days in Denver, which, I mean, even right now, do I want any Denver pass catchers? Maybe Evan Ingram, but other than that, not really. So Jerry Jeudy, honorable mention on this list. So again, our winners, let me know in the comment section down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there anybody I left off? I couldn't make a list of 10. All right, so I went with 4 and an honorable mention. TJ Stroud, DeAndre Swift, Chase Brown, Brenton Strange, and then for our honorable mention, Jerry Jeudy. Hit me up in the comment section. Let me know, do you agree, disagree, or did I leave anyone off the list? Let's get to our losers now. I hate the word losers, but they are NFL draft losers for whatever reason. Obviously, The two big ones that come off the top of my head, I'll get into one of them here and then another one in just a second. Najee Harris. Was excited for the landing spot for him to land with the Chargers. Gets only a 1-year, $5 million contract. And at that point, you're going, is that all you could get in the open market? You look at the success that he had in Pittsburgh. He was never anything special. He was just very consistent. Najee Harris was like the vanilla running back. He just went out there and got you his 10 to 15 fantasy points every single week. Had some boom weeks, had some bust weeks, but was never super reliable in terms of, getting you 18 to 20 points, which is like upper echelon for running backs every single week. And then the Chargers go out and draft Omarion Hampton in the first round. And this likely becomes Omarion Hampton's backfield at some point in 2025. Najee Harris will have a role, but he's not going to roll. He's not going to have the role that we predicted he would have when he signed with the Chargers in free agency. And you look at a situation now where in 2026, Najee Harris is likely looking for his third team in 3 years. Be 28 years old, I believe, at that point. Probably coming off modest production. It's just not a situation that, screams buy. It screams sell, if anything, and it probably screams it's too late to sell at this point, just because there's no job security. He's a little bit older, and there's likely not going to be a lot of production for Najee Harris in 2025 with the Chargers. The second player on this list, and kind of in the same situation as Najee Harris, except he didn't sign with the team as a free agent. He actually is in the middle of a contract extension that the team gave him a couple of years ago. Rhamondre Stevenson, Patriots running back. Obviously, they go out and they draft Travion Henderson in the second round. A lot of reports were that the Patriots had several offers for teams to move up into that pick, and they said, no, thank you. We are going to take our rookie running back here in the second round from Ohio State, Travion Henderson. A guy that can do it all. A guy that can very much be a 3-down running back. Now, to me, this by no way eliminates Rhamondre Stevenson's fantasy relevancy. I just can't see him being a top 20 running back at this point. Like, if I had Rhamondre Stevenson at this point and I haven't sold yet and I wasn't able to sell, I'm buying as an injury fill-in, a bye week fill-in, or like a super-duper emergency where I need a running back last minute, because I do think he will be involved. I do think he will be the 1B in that backfield. But here's an interesting stat, and I want to give credit to Ryan Heath of Fantasy Points Data for the research on this. He said the last time Josh McDaniels coached Rhamondre Stevenson, Stevenson played just a 34% overall snap share, ran fewer routes than both Damian Harris and Brandon Bolden, and received only 6 carries inside the 5-yard line all season long. I would say at this point, probably a 35 to 40% snap share for Rhamondre Stevenson is kind of a win. I do think he will be more involved at the goal line. Could be more of a third down back, because if you look at Rhamondre's one really good fantasy season, it was a product of a lot of volume in the pass catching game. He wasn't some insanely productive running back. He just had a lot of volume in the passing game, and that's really what elevated his numbers that season. So this kind of is in line with the role I see for Rhamondre right now, who I think is the 1B in that backfield very clearly to Travion Henderson from day one, where he maybe gets a third of the carries, maybe some goal line work, maybe some third down work, but just not a running back I'm very excited to roster at this point. And I think he's a huge, huge loser via the NFL draft. You look at the contract situation, he is in the middle of an extension that the team gave him a few years ago, but it's only a $3.2 million hit in the offseason in 2026 to move off of Rhamondre Stevenson, and they might exercise that option, whether it's a trade, whether they just release him and let him go and let this be Travion Henderson's backfield, maybe draft some scat back later in the draft next year, who knows, but I just don't see the ceiling anymore for Rhamondre Stevenson in that Patriots offense, as you could see in the last 2 to 3 years. The next guy on this list, I kind of want to say I told you so, although I didn't see it this bad, is going to be Bucs wide receiver Jalen McMillan, who from weeks 14 to weeks 18 last season, McMillan scored 16.7 fantasy points per game. He was legitimately a weekly wide receiver 1 threat. And he was very much fitting into that offense exactly how you want to see a rookie wide receiver do so. But you got to put the caveat that there was no Mike Evans for certain stretches of the season last year, and there was no Chris Godwin. And it wasn't like it was one or the other. It was both. There were stretches where Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were out. Cade Otton went nuclear those weeks, and Jalen McMillan was a benefactor of that as well. Mike Evans did come back towards the end of the season, and McMillan still was very much a focal point in that offense. But the Buccaneers spoke with their actions this offseason. They brought back Chris Godwin on a very nice little contract for the Buccaneers. And then in the top 20, they drafted Emeka Egbuka, who will most certainly be the wide receiver 3 to start the 2025 season, which all but destroys Jalen McMillan's dynasty value. I never saw the reason for the hype around Jalen McMillan. I didn't even love – I'm not going to lie. I was more of a Jalen Polk fan coming out, and I still am more of a Jalen Polk fan. From the 2024 rookie draft, I just think he landed in a terrible situation with a terrible coaching staff that was playing him completely out of position. I never understood the Jalen McMillan hype, even when he was producing these numbers last year. He's not a receiver that's very flexible in the offense. You can't really move him around. He plays one specific position. And also, I just think he was a benefactor of that offense missing its starting wide receivers. And the Buccaneers told you this offseason, hey, we don't believe in Jalen McMillan like you guys do. We are bringing in another wide receiver, and now we have a stacked wide receiver room of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Emeka Egbuka. And at worst, at minimum, 2 of the 3 of those guys will be back on this team next season just because of the contract and draft capital invested into those wide receivers. So for that reason, Jalen McMillan has to be a huge, huge loser via the NFL draft. And then last but not least, and then we'll have an honorable mention, Cole Kmet, obviously a giant loser from the results of the 2025 NFL draft. In the middle of an extension that runs through 2027, just a weird situation because same general manager, different head coach, I get that, but same general manager that gave him a pretty big contract extension just a couple years ago, and now Cole Kmet is in the second year of that extension, and they bring in Colston Loveland with top 10 NFL draft capital. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Now, look, 12 personnel is a thing. 12 personnel exist. It's a real thing. I understand that. I just don't think with the investment that the Bears gave to Colston Loveland and Ben Johnson coming in and telling Ryan Poles, hey, I know you like this guy, but I need this guy to be my tight end for this team. I don't think that Cole Kmet is any kind of fantasy relevant in 2025 if he is still a member of the Chicago Bears come week 1. Could he be a trade candidate? Sure. Would I be as pessimistic about Cole Kmet if there wasn't DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Luther Burden at the wide receiver position? Maybe not, but we said the same thing about Michael Mayer a year ago. It's like, well, the Raiders could run two tight ends, and they just didn't. I think Michael Mayer had 48 fantasy points last season. I just don't see a path to being any kind of relevant for fantasy purposes with Cole Kmet in 2025. As a member of the Chicago Bears, I will put that caveat. Probably a really good NFL player, but for your fantasy teams, I mean, at this point, his value is in the toilet. I look at him exactly as I would Michael Mayer last season, where he just is not a focal point and not a part of this offense unless something happens to Brock Bowers or in this situation to Colston Loveland. That offense is going to run through Colston Loveland at the tight end position. Last but not least, an honorable mention. Haven't really heard anybody talk about this player, and this is actually somebody that I was a big fan of last year. I'm a big fan of just players getting opportunities in different systems, and that's going to be Sam Darnold. Now, look, the dialogue around Sam Darnold is going to be, well, he had to do it in the perfect offense, the perfect situation. Yeah, he did. Yeah, so what? But he did do it. He was a top 5 fantasy quarterback last season and parlayed that into a 3-year, $100 million deal with the Seattle Seahawks. When you break down the contract, though, it kind of looks like a 1-year plus 1-year deal where the Seahawks can move off of him after 2025. It's a giant cap hit. It's $37.5 million. to move off of Sam Darnold, but they'd only be doing that if they felt confident in Jalen Milroe, who they drafted in the 3rd round. I just don't love, like, hey, we believe in you. Here's $100 million, but we're going to bring in this other guy. You know, there's two sides to this. Like, yes, every quarterback needs competition. They should have competition. Nobody should just have a straight runway to the starting quarterback path unless you're a Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. But Mike Macdonald, not an offensive head coach, not somebody I trust to nurture a quarterback that is still growing, still getting better. I know nobody wants to hear that, but that's just the fact of the matter is the NFL sucks at developing quarterbacks, and Sam Darnold took a giant leap in the last 2 years being in San Francisco with an offensive-minded head coach, and then last year in Minnesota with an offensive-minded head coach, and now he gets Clint Kubiak. I'm not super excited about that. So I had to put Sam Darnold on this list, and that doesn't mean that I am off the Sam Darnold train because I have somebody that's been on the Sam Darnold train. It's just an unfortunate situation to me for Sam Darnold because the first sign that he struggles, you're going to start hearing the Jalen Milroe stuff. And look, this could mean that Sam Darnold gets moved in the offseason next year. It doesn't mean his fantasy value is dead, which is why he's on the honorable mention of this list. I just think for how much safety and security you might have felt with Sam Darnold after his performance last season and after the contract that he got, given $100 million, is nothing to laugh about. Look what Baker Mayfield is about to turn that $100 million contract he got from Tampa probably into $150 to $200 million in the offseason next year. Mark my words on that. So this was a stepping stone in the right direction for Sam Darnold, and you didn't see the Buccaneers do that. You didn't see them, here's $100 million, but we're not 100% sold on you. They were sold on Baker Mayfield, and they brought in other weapons. They brought in Rashad White. They brought in Bucky Irving, K-Dot, and so on and so forth. So for that reason, I had to put Sam Darnold on this list as much as I didn't really want to do that. But again, if you want to agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments section down below. Did I leave anyone off the list? Don't forget to get access to our free week of our Discord. You can chat in there with me. Let me know some of the names on this list. And a lot of times we throw out this topic to you guys to try to get ideas of who might be some winners or losers or whatever our video topic is. We like to bounce ideas off of you. So click the pinned link down below. Get access to a free week on our Discord. Chat with us. And again, let me know in the comment section down below. Subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button. See you guys in the next one. Let's get out there and make some trades, folks.